for September. We have a pretty good agenda going for today. We're starting, sorry, I just had it in one way. Oh yeah, so we're just gonna start out with, I think, Judith, you said you had some updates you wanna go to?
Yes, I wanted to let folks know that we followed up with Robert Taylor, and they have now sent condolences to both families since the resolution been passed that have been killed by police, and that Robert is going to make sure that it gets embedded in the mayor practices so that it's done on a more regular basis. And the other thing, excuse me, I just have to look at my phone. Oh, yes. So Stephanie, who is here tonight, I'll let her, when you do introductions, introduce herself. But Stephanie is going to be our liaison with the mayor's office now. So super happy that you're on board, Stephanie. Thank you. Hope we get to keep you for a while. Sort of glue you to your seat. Thank you. That was all that I had from our updates.
Yeah, and welcome, Stephanie. Did you want to say anything, or are you working as the new public safety advisor for this mayor's office?
Yeah, so I'm like week 2 public safety advisor from the mayor's office. I retired last year from the Portland Police Bureau as a captain, and so I'm back in this capacity to try to pick up where one of the Robert King, had left off.
Awesome. Well, it's great to have you, and welcome, and for stepping out of retirement for us, or for the city, actually. We're really excited to have you in this role, and we have a strong relationship with the liaisons in the past, and so looking forward to a new one with you in your new role. So in regards to just the beginning of the agenda, the first thing we had was the TRC. And did you want to share anything on that? Anything that I probably don't know since I wasn't there last month?
No, it's just I wasn't able to be at that last meeting either. So I just wanted to bring it up and kind of talk about it and what do we want to do moving forward. It's kind of just in its state. Do we want to, one idea I had is just for everyone on the call, did we want to go around and do introductions first, or did we want to do that in the chat for people? What do y'all think?
Quick round would be good. Just real quick, name, pronouns, and where you're at or which group you're with.
Okay. Well, since I was talking, I could just start and then move it around and come back and talk about the TRC. Ann Campbell, she, her. I'm on the steering committee. I'm the secretary. I'm also on the settlement and policy committee.
I was just saying in the chat, I think it just might be easier because I think everyone, the only new person was Stephanie, I believe. Everyone else but for introductions, I believe Rochelle and Barbara are the only community members, and then Mary Buckley, I'm sure you know Stephanie as well. So thank you, Anne. Sorry, did you want to continue on?
Yes, sorry. So where we left it with the TRC, just to recap, we had 4 webinars. We met with it's kind of a consultant group, Taji, I don't know if you would call them that, of Truth and Reconciliation Commission, people that had done the work actually around the country and around the world, and with our colleagues at Portland State, and we're at the point of wanting to write a report to give to the mayor and the city council as our next steps. And in our thinking about it, or my thinking about it, we were going to put together a proposal of what we think it could look like. So we aren't going to say specifics. Is that correct, Taji? Did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think the biggest from my understanding, we just haven't had a chance to meet again. It was like a scheduling conflict throughout August, and then we just haven't picked up since September. Because last time we met, we did have some beginning draft language for the report, but it just hasn't been, from my understanding, I haven't been able to work on it personally, but have more time, excuse me, I'm with kombucha. I have more time coming and I can work on it more, but I think we also wanted to figure out how this fits into the existing engagement of the community members who were engaging with the webinars that we had. We, for folks who weren't there, we had a series of webinars in June that are all available on PCCEP's YouTube page that outlined basically a history of TRCs across the country, how they work, how they can be trauma informed, some really great insights, and really recommend it to anyone who hasn't taken a chance to look there. And we also, yeah, so from that, this is where this whole report has come, and we're trying to figure out how do we best frame it with parts from those webinars, with new information, but also not trying to make it too much work. But from what I'm saying, it sounds like a lot already. But that, yeah, so I guess that's the sort of, not roadblock, but I guess that's where we're at right now, the intersection we're at right now, trying to figure out how to finish that report and get it to City Council. And I think it might be, yeah, I don't know, maybe we should get that meeting together and go from there as the next.
Yeah, and I was also thinking, not to cut you off, are you done? I was also wondering if we wanted to invite some other people that might want to help us with it. And I do want to circle back with Eduardo and others and see if they would, you know, once we get something substantial, they could look at it. So this is just a time I wanted to talk about it. I just got a message from Judith that said Sam said that it's going to go before the mayor, not the city council. So we might want to keep that in mind. I don't know what your understanding was, Taji.
Well, I don't think we ever clarified any final plans on how we would share it to the mayor, city council, or otherwise. Yeah, so I personally think it should not just go to the mayor because of the interests of other city council members in TRC work. But I know that the formal work session or anything like that might not be feasible. So it might just be in the sense of, yeah, Judith.
Yeah, Taji, I don't know, have you guys talked to any of the staff in Commissioner Hardesty's office?
Yeah, I've talked with Brad. I was supposed to meet with Hardesty when she got back in September, but I haven't followed up on my email last with Derek.
Okay,
One of her staff, one of her staff had been in the webinars.
Yeah, Mac came, and she got money to do a TRC in the last budget, and her understanding is that she is going to be in charge of that. So I think there's a little political misunderstanding going on. So that's when Sam Diaz and we were talking about it, but he said, the report would go to the mayor. Part of that is also, I'll tell you honestly, council is so packed. I mean, it could be like months and months before you would have time to get scheduled in. We have so many things we're trying to get done at the city right now with all of the emergencies we're under. But I really recommend, I had been hoping there would be somebody that would politically work this out for y'all previously, but I think it probably is a conversation you need to have to understand what's actually going on. Because when I saw that in the budget, she got $200,000 to make it go. And she had mentioned to me at one point that it was her understanding that she was in charge. So I just wanted to put that out for y'all and as part of your context.
Yeah, that's interesting because Anne and I received.
We didn't know that.
Yeah, we didn't know that because we asked explicitly, like, does Hardesty's office have any involvement in TRC efforts starting before we even had the webinars? We asked this back in April or May. They said that her office said no. And so it's not, maybe they just weren't saying about the budget. Maybe they hadn't begun that work yet. Either way, this is all new information. That's new information for me about the budget, the $200,000.
Something may have changed, but I have definitely heard conflicting things, and I don't want you to end up, and I'm sorry, I should have probably mentioned something. As I said, I did mention it to people in the mayor's office saying, you know, what, could you get this taken care of? Not to put them on the spot. There's been a lot of changes. But I do think it requires some clarification. And Mac Miller was the person who we understood in her office was going to be taking the lead on it. So just a good thing to figure out. It
Well,
might help.
how-
It might help inform your sense of how what much you want to put in the report as well.
How do you suggest we figure that out? Should we meet with them or?
You can send, I think you could start with an email to request a meeting with Mac. And we as staff could help set that up for you all if you'd like. You know, we can try to figure out what we know, if it's going to take a while for a meeting. But yes, it was confusing, and that money
And-
was last year. I don't know what happened this year. But I understood that there had even been people meeting on it. Now that is secondhand, so I don't want to, you know, I'm not making any determinations about that, but how would you like to follow up on that? And is there a way staff can help you with that?
I think it might be best to just go about it with meeting with Mac and finding out where their office is planning to take that work, considering we've already got a good amount of work started on it, and so I think there's just an opportunity to congeal and figure out ways to make it work with what existing community efforts are going on right now with this consultant group and us, and then connecting with the mayor's office. Lakiana, do you have anything to share on that? And
I just needed a clarifying question of, I missed the piece. I had to step off for a second. What is being discussed in regards to TRC and Hardesty's office?
It's sort of, I don't want to call it hearsay, but it's less of definitive information. We're just trying to understand more about who's in charge of the moving pieces of a TRC. And apparently there's funding that was put forward in the budget under Hardesty's office for some efforts of that sort, but none of it has been spent or I don't think anything's been done with it yet. And so we're just trying to get some information, and there's a lot of concerted efforts being had about this right now. So we're trying to just get it together. Nothing.
I think that's, to me, it seems secondary. I think we should ask staff to ask them, but we did our report and, you know, it stands
No,
as
we didn't
is.
finish the report.
And
We
Say it
haven't
again?
finished the report. That's what
right,
we're talking
right.
about.
And so all we have to do is just, you know, put our recommendation together. You know, put it out there. If other groups are doing work and they're interested in hearing what PCCEP, you know, did in ours, and that's great. I don't think it's necessarily on us to put out a bunch of effort tracking down what they're doing and putting ours together. I think once it's done, we can send it out to those groups and say, hey, mayor's office, you know, city council members, here's our report, here's what we did. And I think it can stand on its own if they're interested in picking it up and following it more, which, you know, I think that they should be, but if they're not, it's not necessarily on us as well. Also think it should obviously go to the police bureau as well, is my thoughts.
Well, thank you for that. We're just kind of, we're kind of in a, I'm not going to say the word stall, but we haven't, Taji and I haven't put together the report yet. We're kind of in a stage of kind of, we have a kind of a very rough draft that we need to move forward on. So that's, in one sense, I hear what you're saying, Lakiana, but in one sense, it might be nice
To have a staff who could maybe carry this, because it's a
Yeah.
little more of a,
Well, I think that's a good idea. I think it might be good to have staff write like the major pieces of it. I was just kind of thinking that it could be helpful to have them do it. But as far as like making sure other groups are involved in it, or I don't know.
that
I just think we
wasn't
just,
what we were talking about.
yeah, we just need to write it. If other groups are doing their stuff and they want to do whatever with it, they can. But I think we just need to write it and maybe have staff help in writing some of those pieces out. And also see if there's other PCCEP members that have the time and energy to do it. But I think honestly, that could be even a function of staff, is to help write recommendations, because it's not always assumed that PCCEP members even have that capability to do it. So just my thought.
Thanks, Lucky. And I just would say that staff wasn't at every one of those meetings, so I'm sure we'd be really happy to help pull a report together, but I wouldn't say that and I don't think Theo attended all of them either, but so we're not necessarily subject matter experts in what you've all discovered. Did I hear you correctly, Ann and Taji, that you are considering your next step I thought I heard you say you thought about pulling people together again that have been involved so far in the process to have a conversation about what people felt the report should say. Is that what I heard or no?
No, that was an idea that was being chopped around. I threw it out there. I'm sorry. I don't want to, that was just not, no,
I don't
like,
think
that wasn't the
yeah,
final idea.
I don't think you reached closure on it. So for the notes,
For the
let me
notes,
know.
that was an idea, and the closure, I think, is just a follow up with the comms from the Hardesty's office, and Taji and Ann will meet with the consultants after Taji and Ann have met with each other to work on the rest of the report draft that we can put together.
Yeah, we're just, I just wanted to resurface it so we would start kind of thinking about where we're going with it. But I think, yeah, it'd be great to follow up with Hardesty's office because, I mean, we could collaborate maybe.
Yeah. Okay, well, for the next agenda item, I just wanted to get to is the strategic plan. I wasn't sure, I talked a little bit with Lakiana. I don't think it was brought up in the official voting capacity at the last August meeting. But to bring up now the idea of a strategic plan, the idea of funding a contractor to draft a strategic plan for PCCEP that would include looking at how we can re-envision the subcommittees and also how we can have a stronger foundation in PCCEP, as well as just understanding how that relates a lot to community engagement. And so I think there's a really good opportunity to fund this and a really good opportunity to see how, looking from an outside perspective, how PCCEP can improve. And I think it could be really beneficial to the committee. So, I mean, we're not voting on it here. I just want to clarify, does anyone have, oh yeah, so Theo has financial information on that. So I don't know if there's even a need for a budget ask, but in the event of, there are resources. Okay, cool. Thank you, Judith. That's perfect to know. Anne, did you have any thoughts or comments on the idea of bringing this?
Well, does this include the idea of having a community organizer position, or is that something else? Is that something different?
I mean, one of the recommendations out of the strategic plan could be the need for a community organizer or engagement officer, advisor, or coordinator.
That is in one of the metrics, the Amici metrics that they want. We heard about it at the court date. And I thought that was talked about as something. Lakiana, do you remember that?
And there is
Yeah. Go ahead, Judith.
Go ahead. One sec, Judith.
Yes, we've been having conversations about that. That is not something we would ask for in the bump necessarily, which is what we're working on right now is the fall bump. So we'd have to look at the budget process for that. Although I think because of PCCEP and the settlement agreement that it could be fast forwarded. And I believe that Theo and Kofi are meeting and we'll be discussing that later this week.
Okay, so we'll definitely have the strategic plan on there. I think even adding in just a note about potential, staff position or just a question of that as well is also on just an update we would like to hear from the, I think, I don't know how other people's thoughts on this, but having staff updates as another one of the updates we do would be good at the full board meetings that could just give us updates on things like Judith did with our new liaison, and as well as other things like, the outcomes of, those budget meetings and whether or not the feasibility of a new position in the OHR's budget. So those things would be great to hear about. Does that sound good to people to add like a staff update part to the updates for the full board meetings?
Yeah, did we close out the strategic plan conversation?
No, do you have still thoughts on that you want to share?
I did, but I didn't. How is this connected with that? Was this part of that?
Because we were asking about the budget, and I wanted to hear about what happens at that meeting with Kofi later this week. So I said we should maybe start getting updates at the full board meeting.
Okay, so just kind of like a side note, because I was also lost my thought. As far as the strategic plan, as Ann was talking about the Amici metrics, and then you also brought up the community organizer, those pieces should both go into the strategic plan. A strategic plan, part of what it would require is what are those metrics, for success. So as you think about it, we've been asked to give metrics and we don't even have a strategic plan. So it's like really like putting the cart before the horse. And if part of carrying out the strategic plan, all of the stuff would basically be on the table, like what kinds of things would we need? And so then that would be part of it. Like, okay, part of the strategic plan involves us doing X, Y, and Z. And to do that, we'll need a community organizer. So I think it'll be a really helpful conversation and process to really help orient the group. And it's really vital that we have one, because right now, we don't have really a direction of what we're trying to do. I was talking with Taji yesterday, and one of the things we also mentioned was thinking about the subcommittees and are the current, titles and focus of the subcommittees, are those the right ones? And so that could be something that could be part of it too. Because without that coordination, we're just kind of running all over the place and not maximizing the resources, efforts, and talents of the committee. So I'm big advocate of it. And we need to get somebody in here who knows how to do it and do it well.
Oh, can I share some things? Number one is, I believe we could move on that pretty quickly. And so I will definitely follow up on that and let Theo know that we need to, I don't know, I mean, it's up to you. I'm not sure if the whole committee needs to vote on doing a strategic plan, or if that's kind of the role of the steering committee to take care of the administrative and kind of life and health of the committee. But that's something to consider. And I'm sorry, one update I forgot to add is that at the last, and this has to do with what are the outstanding asks for the money and stuff. At the last meeting, there was possible discussion about hiring a consultant to go through all of the data from the protests last year and the use of force reports. And then Dan from CopWatch pointed out near the end of the meeting that a lot of the information had not been redacted. And Hector Dominguez, who is the open data coordinator, and we work on privacy and surveillance together, and we followed up to find out what was going on, and had a long talk with the city attorney who manages the public record issues. And Dan was concerned because a lot of information came out in that data that was then made public after PCCEP's request, including people's addresses, cell phone numbers, and given the political place we are, Dan was concerned about people's safety. The person who manages the what can and cannot be redacted is actually, she's got a lot of information, and she said she would love sometime to come to PCCEP and present to everybody about what the city's limitations are in terms of what they can and cannot release, or things they can and cannot redact. So I just want to throw out there that that's an open offer from her. She would like to do that at some point, but there's a lot of unredacted information, is just because there have been legal battles about what could be redacted. The city's lost them every time. I think I characterized that fairly.
Yeah, thank you, Judith. And I also think, I don't know. So was there any outcome on the Fdcr contract discussion? No vote or anything was had, right?
I don't think there was a vote, and there was and I'm sorry, I'm so bad with names right now in my brain, but Debbie from the League of Women Voters questioned whether it would be a duplication of what the DOJ is requiring of the city to get in compliance. And they'll be using an outside independent source. And I think Mary Claire's here if she wants to speak to that, but no, I don't think there was I didn't hear a decision.
Real quickly, and I just wanted to say to that point, like, yeah, I personally think I didn't know the DOJ was doing an external one. I think the only thing we wanted was an external review of those reports. So if it's being done, I really think it does make it moot for us to have to try to get that contractor as well, considering we're already trying to get a strategic plan contractor. And
Does that get at what Elliot was asking for, though? I mean, he has it does. Okay.
from my understanding, it does. as best as my
little-
understanding what Judith
yeah.
said, if it's the DOJ commissioning an outside external review of FDCR reports, that's exactly what we were looking to do. But it would just be from a quote unquote community perspective, as opposed to the DOJ, which is pretty far from the community. No, not well, as an entity, not, I'm sure they have some great concerted efforts as well.
Looks like Mary Claire
just-
might have some info.
Yeah. Just to be clear, the DOJ is not commissioning, they're requiring it as a remedy, but the city will be paying for it. The DOJ is not paying for it. We are in discussions now about the scope of that, report and, the study. So.
What does those discussions look like? Or
Pardon?
like, is the discussion on like what to include in the report mainly?
Yeah,
Or is
Yeah,
it-
because it's 180 days. DOJ wants it to happen, for the report to come within, 180 days. And most of the, and the people who do this, so the organizations that do this, couldn't look at all 180 days and get a report, after coming, because what's going to happen is they're going to review all the materials from the Bureau. They're going to go out and talk to community members. They're going to talk to business people. They're going to, that was the whole point, is to look at this, comprehensively and write a report of, where the, issues were, make findings and recommendations. And so that, most of the people we've talked to thus far, if it was to cover all 180 days or 171, it just would be impossible to get that done in 6 months. So we've talked to DOJ. They are now working on, defining a scope. We may be looking at, sample size, for example, taking X number of days of the 180 and having them look at it or whatever and do a fulsome. So those conversations are happening right now. We're working on it, as I said, because it is a proposed remedy. But I do think that, that's going to cost the city a lot of money. Could be $100,000 for all I know. I mean, it is an expensive proposition. And so, it seems to me that probably, we can, share with you maybe the scope, or, if you have some things you want particularly covered, we can try and talk to that. But it seems that one would be, they're professionals, they do them. Yeah. And it'll be comprehensive, and it'll be, will serve multiple purposes.
For sure. Thank you. For
You bet.
So strategic plan, I think we're clear. It's going to be on the agenda. It's going to include a Michi metrics convo, a coordinator position convo. I think everyone was kosher with adding the staff updates to the general meeting updates for the agenda. And then we also agreed that it's erroneous for us to do a independent contractor for this FDCR work, because it's being done by the city out of the remedies needed by the DOJ for compliance. So that's good. And so that puts us to the next agenda item, but I am also remembering that I did want to bring up something else now that I'm strategic plan. I swear, and my notes are horrible. Let's just go to the community discussion. Maybe I'll remember. So the community discussion forum. I actually am unsure on much of this agenda items content. Does any Lakiana, Ann, do you know more on this? You could help me.
Go ahead, Ann.
No, Lakiana, why don't you talk about it? I was just gonna add in after you.
Okay, yeah, so just basically an idea about, one of the things I think PCCEP and the Portland Police Bureau could use more of is like opportunities where there's initiatives that we're both like working on together. Like there's nothing like that's like really set in there. There's like here's an ongoing thing that the Bureau and PCCEP could collaborate on. And as I was sitting in last month's meeting and hearing the questions about the Proud Boys rally that had gone on, this happens a lot where there's some event happening that we want to talk about it at PCCEP, and then it ends up taking a large amount of the time. I was thinking that that PPB could host a community like discussion session over Zoom and allow community members to ask questions, dive deeper into those pieces, and it could be hosted in conjunction with PCCEP. It would also serve the Bureau a lot because there's so much hearsay about, there's basically, you get a press conference, you get news articles, and then people just go to Twitter and wherever else and just discuss and not even make up, but just add their input because there's no real like opportunity to hear, discuss, or provide feedback. So that was my suggestion, was that after events like that, there could be an online forum that's facilitated in part by PCCEP where people can ask questions, give input, and would provide the Bureau an opportunity to really share out what happened, what didn't happen. Obviously, the facilitation piece would be important just because of what that could spiral into, but I think that there's a way that it could be done. So that was the suggestion.
Yeah, and I really liked that idea. And it was when you were talking about it before, I think you added in, or maybe I just heard this, that the mayor's office would be there as well. It would be nice to have the mayor's office and PPB and PCCEP could facilitate that. Were you thinking the mayor's office as well could be a part of that, or?
Could be, depending on the incident and the event, or have someone, on hand. But I think it would, yeah.
I like the idea. I just wonder, that particular issue, as we know, got a lot of press and a lot of community questions, and it did involve the mayor. So I just want to have that. I think it's a great idea, and I think it would be a nice forum for the mayor's office and PPB to just kind of say, this is what we were thinking was going to happen. This is what happened. Do you have any questions? Something like that. And maybe we can quarterly basis or something to start out with. I mean, or I don't know. It doesn't always have to be right after something. So we could kind of get, I don't know, some sort of dialogue going. What do you think about that?
Yeah, oh, go ahead. I was going to say, this sounds like a great idea. It sounds like it's different from it's different from what PCCEP previously did with like town halls or forums, because if it was quarterly, it would be very focused on, what happened that past quarter or whatever. That could be good. And I think having PPB host it, I know there also is existing stuff kind of similar to this though. I know there's the Peace Collaborative that happens. And Judith is rightfully mentioning that it's in our PCCEP plan that we're supposed to hold town halls, which we do for a number of different things like the DOJ's stuff and for the COCL stuff, but I don't know if we are including all of that under the same auspice. But Rochelle?
I think you need to be cautious about how close to an event you're talking about, because PPV might be able to only say, we can't tell you anything, or we're investigating that, or something in that vein that will just frustrate the community.
That's a really good point, Rochelle.
Yeah, and I would second Rochelle's comments. Depending upon what event you're talking about, if it's an officer involved shooting, there are limitations. It is a district attorney case. It has to be fully investigated. The Bureau is not free to speak until, after the grand jury, the whole bit. And then there's obviously internal investigations that have to be completed. So, as Rochelle says, my concern would only be that we invite people and then they are frustrated by the fact that we can't share all that people want to be shared at that moment. So just something to consider about when you decide which ones you want to talk about. Or
I think I'm really here for the idea, and I think that detail is a crucial detail, like how these meetings are either shaped around incidences or if they're shaped around the sort of temperature of the community and the temperature of PPB after a number of things happen in a quarter. I think this sort of conversation is really good to have at our full board meeting. So I think this might be a good place to add this to the agenda for sure. And Jared, I know you just walked in. We're talking about item number 3, the community forum, if you didn't catch that. And yeah, so does that sound okay for folks? Because I feel like there is more we could talk on it. I just feel like it might be better to have more voices here on that. And also, I think we agree the idea is good, but how do we make it work better might be something we want to try to juggle and work out the kinks in the larger setting. But Lakian, if you had any other thoughts you wanted to share.
Yeah, so I've been thinking about this tonight, and I'd like to share some pieces later on, but I actually don't think it would be the best form to bring to the larger group because we haven't discussed it enough, and it's just going to turn into a bunch of people with a bunch of opinions. I think, you know, like myself and maybe a couple other people should talk with PPB and get some like kind of details and really in order before we and bring like a better pitch to the board meeting. Because I think one of the things we have to really consider is I think we need to reconsider just things that we bring and like making sure when they get to a full board meeting that they are very thoroughly sought out. We know exactly what we're asking members to discuss. We have done our due diligence of the pieces of it. Otherwise, we're going to open a Pandora's box on something. So I would suggest if the Bureau's interested in this, that we find a time to meet, find the right people that would have the input on it and discuss some of the details and further.
That's a wise decision from Lakiana on that. So let's, Lakiana, and I can check in with you about that because I think it would be good to also just follow up on that loop. I don't know if it's been closed since Marcia left, but you know, I know there was ongoing conversation about relationships with PCCEP, and I think this could be a way to continue that in another forum. And so let's try to get connected to get those conversations going so we can make sure it's ready for not the full board meeting, but just maybe next time we bring it up. It's a starting idea for sure. Judith?
and Lakiana, I thought you were going to meet with AC Resch about that, and so I don't know if that got put off or whatever, but
we met, but we met about something different.
Oh,
And
else?
I'm,
Okay.
I'm not sure if she's the person to talk to, then I will follow up with her on it.
Would she be the person?
Yeah.
or
That
you know,
kind of relates
or
to my,
DC Frome, you know, is also.
I was gonna say that, you know, DC Davis was coming before he moved on. And can we get DC Frome to come and or get a meeting with him to have a conversation like this? I think that would be excellent.
And then Anne,
Would
and then
this-
Tia, I saw
Can
your
I-
comments.
Can I agree with Lakiana. It needs to be talked about a bit more before we meet with people and talk about it with the larger group or just with our group. And I'd like to be a part of those discussions with the Police Bureau as well.
Okay, perfect. We'll make sure you're a part of that as well. And then Tia, you said some good comments in there. I can try to quickly, would the coordinator, would the community organizer or coordinator overseeing the FDCRs be hired by the city? Yeah, that's what Mary Buckley was saying. It's part of the DOJ's remedy. The DOJ has remedies given to the city to be in compliance, and one of them is the remedy of needing to pay for a contractor to review the FDCR reports from 2020. And then the second question, would PCCEP be in charge of finding this person? No. And then the third one is we already have the FDCRs are public already. They're up on, I want to say PCCEP site, but it's definitely PPB site. They have them available. If anyone has a link, that would be great. I could, it's probably somewhere hidden in what, there's so many links. So, but if you want to find them, we can get you them. They're a handful to look at though, I'll warn you. Okay, and then any other questions or comments on this topic? I think it is just set to be tabled for then steering committee next month. Hopefully we have worked out the kinks by then to then have it discussed and brought up in more formal setting, but I'm liking the beginning conversations on this. Was there anyone else interested in being engaged in those conversations? And here that I missed out on, and you can share in the chat with me if you want to as well. Okay, let's know. Yeah, I think the plan is to have, I think Lakiana, you said you could reach out to AC from, or do you said, would it be better if staff schedule that meeting for us? Possible.
I can do it since it's quite a small one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then Lakiana, will you then invite the other people who are interested in attending? When you
Yeah,
come up
that's
with that,
Anne and who else?
Me.
Taji?
Yep.
Okay.
Ask, where did we end with this? What ended up with the strategic plan next steps? Are you gonna take it
I
to the
think this
full
would
board
be,
or?
yeah, it basically
Gonna-
last agenda item is the agenda. And yeah, one of them is going to be the strategic plan. And I think it, like you said, it did not need to be brought to the full board initially, but this is what I was going to say earlier, is that I got pushback from Theo on this, and he said until the full board agrees that we can't do it. So I said, okay, so let's get it to the full board. So that's the only reason it's coming to this vote.
Maybe you could have it as a short item, almost like a consent agenda.
Yeah, I like that better, because I don't think if people will be against improving PCCEP in any way. I think he just wanted to make sure everyone was also on board with the idea, especially because it has money implications. And I think other members were saying when we have money implications, to make sure it's voted on. I was mentioned by the dean, for example. Okay, and then the rest, now we have to just get the rest of the agenda together, unless there was other items I'm missing, and I feel like I am, but I literally cannot remember for the life of me. So let me just pull up the.
I just recently, this afternoon, sent an email to Lakiana and Taji. Did you receive that? It was about that CAG. Maybe offline you can, it was a letter that they're sending to the mayor, but I'm not really clear about the CAG. We're not part of it. I didn't know if we wanted to reach out. So you can read that and we could talk about it later.
Yeah, so, the codification was the other thing I was thinking of. I'm looking at the meeting minutes from August, and it says that we're gonna add that to our September agenda. From
We
my,
weren't able to vote on anything. We didn't have a quorum, so everything needs to be redone in my mind.
so codification, and I think it might be for time's sake, like we've talked, it says basically here, it looks like we've done a lot on it. So I just want to make sure we try to like start with an understanding of where we were last. So I'm looking here. So we did have the new members, and we had the quarterly report. Did we need to have the quarterly report brought up again or no?
We need the CRC. It's not a report, it's a statement.
Oh yeah,
We wanted to vote on that.
so the CRC support statement for their report.
Yes. Yeah, it was on our meeting last month, but we didn't have enough, and it is on our website right now.
Okay.
And the metrics, I don't know what we want to do with that.
Metrics is under, I put it under the strategic plan, and same with the coordinator position. Is that, Judith, is that, hope that makes sense to you? Just like their sub bullets of that.
Yes, if I heard you correctly, that you would figure that out through doing a strategic plan will help you identify what other resources you need and what kind of metrics make sense, what if they need to align with your strategic plan, right?
How,
And I think,
go ahead.
Jared, you weren't here earlier in the meeting, but I know that that you talked about using the metrics that were provided by the AMC and the Mental Health Alliance last year. I'm wondering if there are opportunities to still negotiate those.
Was Jared going to respond to that, or was that just a comment?
I thought he was going to respond to it, but maybe he's not. So sorry, put him on the spot.
No, it's all good. He might be away from the computer or something. So sorry, I was also reading. So yeah, Tia, there is, I think that made me think of another thing I think I want to bring up. I brought it up last steering committee or maybe even at the board meeting in July, but this idea, like we haven't had a chance to have a retreat because it's been a scheduling conflict issue. We have these new members, and then we also have this larger issue where we want to talk about business, but we have this rule where we can't talk about business in retreats. So I think it might be beneficial to have a setting where we could talk about things as a full PCCEP without having to have the public there. And so we can get some of the work done. I think that's, an example of a meeting that would benefit would be to talk about the codification document and talk about where member responsibilities come into play, where staff responsibilities come into play and whatnot. And then talking about the strategic plan in that same conversation would also be something that would be like, what does the PCCEP see? And then also the handbook, for example, like going over those things. That all would really benefit in a setting that we could do it privately so that we could do just candid conversations around PCCEP, how we can improve and really talk about the temperature of PCCEP now with these new members. And I think that's something we really need to do. So I know there's limitations currently. So I think it would require, or actually, I guess I need some advice or guidance on how we could maybe go about trying to have a meeting like that happen. And I also think that we could do it like an executive session, as Elliot called it before he headed off. And I think it would be, the only other issue is like, obviously the conflict of scheduling still exists. So it's just a matter of how do we get folks in the room? How do we utilize the time best as possible? But first and foremost, can we have it is the important question. Does anyone have any insights on that? Maybe Anika, do you know anything on like public meeting rules or anything, or any staff?
What exactly is your public meeting question? I can look into it, but
So if PCCEP wanted to meet with the full board and discuss business, is that something we're able to do?
that, I mean, I would have to, that sounds like a meeting where you're discussing business, so it would have to be public, but I would have to look into it for sure based on what you're saying.
Jared's back in there, all in his suit.
Hey, did I miss a question? I heard my name, but I was walking. I have a hard time walking and using my phone at the same time.
All good. We were just talking about trying to have some sort of executive session where we have PCCEP meet and talk about business and things like the strategic plan and the codification document. But where there's public rule limitations that we are aware of, and trying to, I guess, circumnavigate that is our current situation.
That's
so maybe,
an Anika question, not me.
yeah. Anika, is there no, I mean, how would that, yeah, I don't know. Is there any insight you could provide or look into it and we could maybe
I can look into it, but based on what you're saying, if you're discussing the PCCEP plan or anything related to PCCEP, it would be a public meeting. But I don't have all the, the information and the rules before me, but that's what it sounds like.
Okay. And
Yeah, I'm just for clarity. So I'm trying to understand, you want to have a meeting to talk about the strategic plan, but you want to have it kind of be.
I basically am trying to create this new structure similar to a retreat, but instead of a retreat, we would be allowed to have conversations on business. An example of such would be on the strategic plan or on the codification document, like a work session. Yeah, Tia. Thanks. And even having them public, maybe, I don't know. Anyway.
I think from my experience with where it came from and what the rules are is it would need to be public, but I don't see that would necessarily be a problem. I think you could determine when people could give public input. I can't imagine there'd really be anything that the public couldn't know about these conversations. But they want to be like special longer meetings with a facilitator if you're doing the strategic plan and those kind of things. And then if there's anything in terms of just figuring out people working together, those kind of things, we can do that in a retreat.
Mhm. Okay, yeah, so I think we just need to get that, like, figure out how we can schedule that and make it work. Because I think we are at the roadblock where there was a scheduling conflict, a lack of people responding, and then, so just trying to get some sort of structure around how we're getting people responding and in a room together virtually. So maybe we could have that as I don't know if it's even appropriate to have as an agenda item for the full board. As Lakiana was saying, it's more of like a, maybe an email or something about this. But once again, there's not everyone, checks their email. So
Do a doodle poll again, Taji. I'll start to work on scheduling again.
Okay, yeah, that would be great to just try to get another schedule situation figured out for the retreat and then work from there. Okay, well, then with that, let's just, I guess, review what's set for the agenda for September. And then, unless anyone has any other thoughts on what has been talked about. Jared, do you have anything to share?
Yeah, Judith caught me up on when I heard my name, because I swear I did, and I sent her a private message to ask what the question was. And I understand that you guys are interested in commenting or establishing your own metrics for PCCEP success. And to the extent like I have anything to say about it, I say PCCEP should do exactly what it wants to do. And if you have your views on what's an appropriate metric to determine if PCCEP is successful, go forth and adopt those metrics, or recommend that the city use them and evaluate yourself with them. If you have particular metrics you want the Department of Justice or the compliance officer to consider in assessing the city's compliance with the settlement agreement as it relates to PCCEP, go ahead and do that, and adopt those, and we'll consider that recommendation and get back to you. So I did make a statement at the hearing that we would consider the amici metrics, that they go to compliance in large part, rather than to whether the amendment should be adopted or approved, so that PCCEP is a part of the settlement agreement. But that shouldn't constrain you all to supplement, modify, eliminate metrics that you think are appropriate or inappropriate. We have been clear as the Department of Justice that we evaluate the city's compliance with its obligations. And so when there are metrics that I know some of the amici have proposed that don't relate to things within the city's control, those are metrics that I can consider in a way, but they are not going to make the city fall out of substantial compliance. Say if PCCEP took a year and didn't make a single recommendation. I mean, if that was because there is no city support, that's a different story. But if it's just because PCCEP is doing groundwork with outreach and evaluating the city's implementation of prior recommendations, there could be lots of reasons why PCCEP's not making a recommendation in a given year. That's your choice. That wouldn't be held against the city in our view of compliance assessment. So that's just, a fine point on, I'm happy, the department's happy to consider recommendations for metrics or evaluating compliance. But there is some limit to that. We have a particular defendant in the case. And so, for example, if I know one of the MHA's metrics was, PCCEP has to have a certain number of retained members, but if people move, I mean, that can't be held against the city. At the same time, if people are quitting because the city's not providing adequate support, or they're not responding to recommendations, or, other reasons, that could be held against the city. So long story short, the Department of Justice would welcome any recommendations you make with respect to metrics, your own success, the city's support of you, including the police bureau and other bureaus that are interested in the work that you're doing. So that's, I hope that answers the question.
Yes, that answers it for yes, all of us, really. Thank you, Jared. Barb, I don't know the answer to that question either. Claudia might. Okay, well, with that being said, we just have to clarify the rest of the agenda for September, and I think that is good for today. The first item was the strategic plan, and then we had the Amici metric, or just metrics, the Amici metrics, and the coordinator position under that. And then this is more of a note, I guess, for the agenda, is adding a staff updates to the board meeting. Adding staff updates to the update section of the agenda. And sorry, do you have a?
Yeah, I was just looking over, I'm wondering if we could look at our last full board meeting and just grab those, for instance, the codification, there was a document attached to that. The PCCEP metrics, there was a document attached to that. That was the one that Amy had started, and then we added some of the other metrics. So we were going to talk about that. And then the CRC statement, support statement. And then we could discuss the quarterly report as well, if we need to. I don't know if we need to. Lakiana, do you think we need to bring that up again?
I don't think so, but I think the other pieces.
Yeah, those should all be separate items, though. I think it's, from what I'm looking at, it shows the CRC and metrics together. Those should be two separate items. And then as well as I feel like there's something else I forgot. Oh yeah, no, that's for the community discussion forums for later. Oh yeah, the retreat. I think we, just for sake of getting people to do the doodle, we should do a reminder, maybe a retreat reminder to fill out the doodle poll. Judith, even if you put it live right when we have the meeting, that might meet people all do it right then and there, so we can get, that just an idea for how we could try to get everyone's availability at the same time, as do like a note at the beginning of the meeting or something.
Great idea, Taji. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Okay, and then I think we should just do an introduction for Stephanie at the meeting too. Stephanie, if you want to share anything at the meeting, maybe about your past work as a captain with PPP at the meeting. You don't have to do that now or anything. I'm saying it's at the not final, when is that? End of September. If you're comfortable with that, you don't have to share anything extensive if you don't want to. And then I think it would be great as well, Judith, to during the staff updates, to share the same updates about the condolences and the comms best practice that are being adopted, just for cohesivity on those recommendations. Okay, sweet. And
we need to vote on a new PCCEP co-chair.
I guess we do for the sake of.
My understanding, what you announced was that we were going to hold off on that until November, when there's going to be a big turnover of, that's when we do the regular voting.
Okay, so because I'm current, so we're not changing titles, it just stays as alternate co-chair now.
Well, no, I mean, I think you've moved into the co-chair role, and the agreement I heard was we weren't going to vote on a new alternate. So I think that's just a done deal, Chair Drew.
I just want to make sure, because I've been saying it, and I just want to make sure that we're following.
I'm cool with that as well.
I think that's a reasonable way to move forward. So thank you for checking that out.
Yeah, I remember it was discussed that you wanted to wait till November.
So then make sure that for the strategic plan, though, it should be a vote for that one, because or a consent vote, let's call it that, or a consensus or whatever. I think that's everything. Am I forgetting anything else for the agenda? Anything else, folks? Or was there any, I don't know, follow up from the FBI meeting that came when he met with us in July? Was there any follow up on that done on anything that we should follow up on? If not, that's okay.
I have a thought that's unrelated to some of this stuff right now, but before we close out, I'd like to just kind of bring it up.
Yeah, I think that's everything for the agenda. So I think we're good for, and Judith, or let us know in the chat, or you can say anything if you don't know, if you forgot one of them or you want to clarify what the items are. But Claudia, yeah.
Can you just clarify on one more time? Because I was like trying to take notes and write down the agenda.
Yeah, sure. From my understanding, we have the strategic plan as a consensus vote. Under the strategic plan is the metrics in the coordinator position discussion. And we also then have the codification, which from my understanding would then be voted on. Is it officially ready to be voted on? Is that what I was hearing? Did I get a clarification on that?
I think so.
So
I
the,
think it was.
and I just want to make sure you all have the latest version. I just checked in with Anika, and I will just resend that to everybody right now. And then Claudia, if you can post it, if it is not the latest version that we have up.
Thank you so much, Judith, for making sure, because I know there's a lot of different ones going around. Okay, perfect. So the codification document, and sorry, I didn't get a clarification on whether or not we're voting on it or not.
Yes.
Yes, okay, cool. And then the other one is the CRC support statement. That's another vote, just to a consensus vote, basically. And the other one was the, no, I think that's it, right? Seems like might be a shorter meeting than 3 hours, which is not a bad thing. 3 hours is a long time. Okay.
Yeah, I have a couple thoughts.
Yes.
First one, what if we switched our steering committee meeting to 5 to 6:30 rather than 5:30 to 7, so we can get done earlier? We start our regular board meetings at 5, and it just seems like an awkward gap of time. So that's one suggestion. Curious to hear people's thoughts on that. Then the other thing, I was looking at this agenda, and I think that we need to consider our steering committee meetings and how to make them more effective. I think this should be a space where we talk about the internal workings and machinery of PCCEP and the pieces that need to be worked on, fixed. I know it's been a suggestion for a long time, but we need to get updates from the other steering subcommittees. That information should be coming back to the steering committee. What are you guys working on? Or what are you all working on? What are the challenges of your committee? What do you need support on, so that we're able to help? You know, like, not only are we just planning an agenda and looking at things that we want to do, but we're also there to look at the overall strength and health of the committee as a whole. And so we're basically in the dark about what other committees are working on and what they need support on. This should also be a place for, you know, member needs, like, is there needs of the members, all the things that help run PCCEP. Some of the items on the agenda today, I think, can be condensed into, like, okay, here are the, you know, 3 or 4 big, you know, recommendations that we're working on that have some kind of, need some tinkering and things of that nature. But I don't think that they should be main agenda items. You know, like the TRC, that can be pulled offline and just people like work on that and figure out what the heck needs to be moved on it. It's not necessarily something for the steering committee to be looking at. And then use this space, like, maybe we can also use this to, like, workshop something, like, let's take a larger issue and actually use this time to work on that, rather than just updating ourselves on things. Like, you know, like, let's take something that, you know, like, okay, the process of bringing on new members, right? We're constantly talking about that. That could be something where we workshop that right in here and actually make progress on it, or, you know, something, and leave reports and other those things, or updates on certain recommendations to a brief thing that then can be maybe utilized at other spaces. So I think that, and that also goes to the steering of the larger committee, right? Because we were just talking like 20 minutes ago, like, hey, let's bring this idea to the whole committee. And it's like, that's not ready for that. So I think we need to take a really close look at what's coming to our full body meetings and saying, is this idea or whatever it is this agenda item really ready to go? Is it in its final packaged form? And we're just asking members to hear it and vote on it, right? But not like, here, we're gonna bring the entire package to be built in front of everybody and people aren't really in the space to do it. Because I mean, it's like, yeah, it can be brought there, but it's just gonna be discussed and, you know, tinkered with. Like whatever comes to that full body meeting should be ready to be acted on. And I think we need to develop that lens and think critically at our meetings, at all of our, well, at least the steering committee and the full body meeting, to see what is being brought up and what is the best use and space for that time. So that's just my suggestion to put in people's ears.
Yeah, I agree with that to the extent that we should have those, that should be the way we move forward with it. I'm not sure how that bodes with the current agenda. I don't think it has any, I don't think that, is there any, are you saying you have any qualms with what we have currently? Or are you just saying like?
No, I need to see it on paper, but just, I think, you know, even like yeah, no, I'm not speaking specifically to this one. I think we should look at it because I had to see it all laid out again to just see, and I'd have to know a little bit about what the status is on everything to know like how well is it. But I think PCCEP could also use some more documents and policies around those things so we can have a criteria to know like, is something ready to be brought up to the full body meeting, and what is, you know, what is the best use of time for the steering committee? Like what are the kinds of things that we're looking at?
Well, can I say something? I think I understand what you're saying. And I'm wondering, like, I hear what you're saying, but how do things get to that ready to go to the full board meeting? Like, for instance, you brought up the TRC, we should have worked on that offline, but the reason I brought it up is that there isn't anything going on and we need to decide, should we bring in more people to work on it? You know, I mean, that's what I'm just kind of, I hear what you're saying. I like the idea, but when do those things get worked on? It's like, I've been here a little over a year and a half or something. And what I've observed is the people that are doing the work and going to the meetings and putting stuff together, you know, I mean, it would be nice to have more input sometimes from others. So that's was my hope, to kind of highlight how maybe some people could get involved in helping, you know, move things forward.
So, okay, like take a look. So on our agenda tonight, it's got TRC for 20 minutes, right? But really only 3 people in this meeting have really worked on TRC, me, you, and Taji, right? And that could be an offline conversation between the 3 of us. Hey, what do we need to do to move this recommendation forward? That's really all we were discussing. And then once we figure that out, and there's nothing anybody else can do other than they could just weigh in on it, but they could weigh in on literally anything. It doesn't really do them any good. We just saved 20 minutes. We figure out, okay, this is what we need to do. We're not excluding anybody from the process. And then we say, okay, we want to start building this at the next whatever meeting, either a racial equity subcommittee meeting, or we create a TRC meeting, and then we find that time to do that. But it's like, that's a decision. That's just a small thing that really doesn't need everybody in it. There's not really anything they can do. And most of them don't even know about it enough to input. So it honestly just confuse them more. So I'm thinking like decisions like that, where it's just like little things that like, yes, they're important. They just need to be moved, but it doesn't necessarily require all of us. And then when we look at all of those things, it's like, if we thought about it from that model, then damn near the whole committee would be like open to like actually working on issues that might require things like, okay, like let's start working, like it was suggested earlier, like the strategic plan.
Lucky, I remember when I used to have those meetings before our steering committee that we had it like 2 or 3 times. I think that is what we should be doing, so we can avoid what you're talking about and make sure we have So if that can just be embedded in staff's items to add to meetings, can you start doing those pre-steering committee meetings so we can come into the steering committee with a better understanding of where the rest of the steering committee is, so that Anne and myself and Lakiana, as the remaining steering committee members, can be all on the same page going forward. I know I think it was helpful when we did those like hour-long meetings just to check in and get a clarity, and then also be able to send you all a clear list of items for the agenda, Claudia, for at least the steering committee.
Yeah, that works for me.
Like, it's a huge problem. We have, I mean, this youth subcommittee, I wasn't able to go to that meeting yesterday, and I'm glad it still happened and there was still insight on it, but there's a deeper issue under there with that relates to the structure of our subcommittees. So it's just important that we try to get more opportunities to check in and make sure we're all going at the same frequency on things. So sorry to cut you off, Lakiana, on that, but do you want to go?
No, it's yeah, and I think the each committee can figure out, like, you know, do we need a pre-meeting? Do we need this and that? But I think a lot of times we get caught up in, and we just haven't thought about it. But when you think about it, it's like a lot of these things could just like, they just need to be talked about with certain people. And it doesn't mean that we're no longer getting community input. We just like need to make sure that we do it in a way that's like people are ready to digest it. I also saw Tia's comment about an email, like read these documents and be ready to discuss. This was something I discussed with a couple, I've said for a while now. I think that one of the tasks that the PCCEP staff can do that would be really helpful is checking in on a monthly basis with each of the members and updating them on what's discussed, because there's too many meetings for any one person to be at all of them and to know these are all the things that are happening. A document or an email that says, hey, here's the recommendations and here's what needs to be done would be great. I think there's a lot of different needs and levels on PCCEP. So it might, like, someone might need not an in-person, but either Zoom or whatever you have it, check in, like our youth members, that would be really helpful for them. Like, hey, here's what happened. Here's what you need to know. Like, here's a topic we're discussing and here's it broken down. For some people like Tia, it might just be like, here's a roundup of everything. Like, read these documents and here's a little blurb about like the main points that were discussed. But I think increasing member education is key. And the thing is, dang, I'm going to lose my train of thought here. But people come to the main PCCEP meeting, and for a lot of them don't know exactly what the heck we are even talking about. And I think it is okay for a member to exist on PCCEP and just come to that meeting. That in and of itself is a big time commitment. And so how can we catch them up so that they can be effective within that meeting and know what the heck is going on? So to that point, that's just my suggestion, is just assessing the needs of PCCEP members. You know, for me, I'm a visual person. Some people might be, it doesn't matter how much text you send me, I need someone to like talk me through it. Okay, maybe there's 2 or 3 members that need that. Maybe for youth members, it's a combination of both. You know, just assessing the needs of PCCEP and what would they need to be checked in with in order to be most effective at a meeting, right? And then if we couple that with making sure that things get to that meeting, are in a state to be discussed, because I think that sometimes we do ourselves a disfavor by bringing ourselves a half-baked pizza and expecting everybody to eat it. So if we can make sure things are ready to go before they get there, then I think we will greatly improve our efficiency on these things.
Yeah, and I wholly agree with that as well. And thank you, Lakiana, for sharing on that. And for the discussion, I want to open it, make sure the public is aware. If you have any thoughts or comments to share on this before we close out for today, please share now. If not, we will close and meet again in the next PCCEP meeting, which probably will be anytime next week or so.
Are we going to, I just wanted to interject real quickly. I know that Lakiana asked if we could change the meeting to 5 to 6:30. Did we want to do that, or did we, I don't know the process. And I see that Tia has her hand up as well.
I think we personally should do that. Yeah, Lakiana, or Tia, then Lakiana. Oh, you're muted, sorry.
I don't have a question. Sorry, I'll go hand down.
I wanted to know, and I'm sorry, I don't know, what the difference is between the steering committee and the full board committee.
The difference between the steering committee and the full board committee. This
Or
is,
board committee.
yeah, this body is supposed to be comprised of the steering committee, which is and myself and Lakiana, and then normally another co-chair, alternate co-chair. And this is an opportunity to get the agenda together for the full board meeting and also discuss the inner workings of PCCEP so we can strengthen PCCEP for the board and for other matters. So we've discussed, potential agenda items like the community discussion forum, and then actual agenda items like a strategic plan, which is meant to strengthen PCCEP, like I said. Does that clarify?
Yes. Who oversees PCCEP? The board or the steering committee?
Great question. I guess PCCEP steering committee oversees PCCEP in air quotes. I'll use that. PCCEP staff sort of report to OEHR, and members then sort of direct or ask of staff to do things. But I guess the power structure is sort of around the steering committee's voted members. We'll be having elections again in November to go over those things. These are really great questions, Tia, and these are things I'd love to have in a handbook so that you wouldn't have to ask them, and I apologize. So I'm just I hope we can get that together soon for you and for other members, because these are great questions though.
Thank you. Okay.
And, any others? Sorry, do you have any other? Does that clarify?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Barb,
you have your hand up? Maybe not.
Yeah, well,
Sorry.
I wanted like a little bit of clarification for, you guys talked about moving the time of the meeting, the steering committee meeting, but you also talked about having a pre-steering committee meeting. So, and then the other question is, where do you want people from the subcommittees to do their reporting, etc.? So I can like relay that to our subcommittee. And I guess the other thing is aren't the subcommittees where the work should be happening?
Yes, they should. Yes, so I'm not suggesting that they don't happen there, but I'm suggesting before it gets to the full body meeting, it should just be ready to go. As far as the pre-meeting, that's just an internal meeting with PCCEP, with the steering committee members, just to like get their, paperwork together and figure out what they want to talk about. You had another question. Oh, in regards to the reports, maybe it's a report out that they come and speak on, but it could also be just something condensed into like a one-page like update. But I think it might be helpful to have a representative come in case there are questions, right? Because if it's like you send in a report, all we got is that, and then we're like, well, we have more follow-up questions. It could be the steering committee chair, or the steering committee, the subcommittee chair, but they could also delegate somebody to come too, right? So it doesn't necessarily have to be, but I think having a rep, and then that way they are getting input on the process as well of whatever we're doing. And maybe they just stay for that first part when we do like check-ins, because I'm thinking it could be like, subcommittee check-ins, and then like major recommendations, and then like a section like work time where we like just select one or two things that we are going to workshop through, the same way that any of the other subcommittees would work on, like you're suggesting, like the behavioral health subcommittee, they're like, we're working on this month. So that's kind of how I'm envisioning it. We're just getting more efficient and effective on our time.
Yeah, and I'm fully supportive of it as well. So I think unless there's opposition, it's not a huge shift. So, okay. With that being said, we're gonna do 5 to 6:30. We are gonna add the staff updates to the meeting, and we have the September meeting together. And I'm looking forward to seeing some of and also we will be doing a pre-meeting for steering committee to try to make sure we can strengthen how the steering committee functions going forward as well. Any other questions, thoughts, or comments, Judith?
I would just like to say that we're still recruiting to replace Elliot's position, and we have 60 days to do that per the bylaws. But we would like to, so we are going to need to know by the end of this month, we're going to have to start with the alternates we have to move forward. So if you have people you would like to engage and encourage to apply, please do.
Yeah.
And those are numbers I think we need to know, right? Like how many, get a quick update. How many alternates are in there? How many members are currently on PCEP? Like
We
all
currently
those
have
little
one
logistics.
alternate and no other applications. So that's where we are right now.
Okay, that's good to
Okay.
know.
Yeah. So we need to.
So.
And
if
we
you
have
get-
the ever ambivalent Barb.
Yes.
Barb, you should just apply,
I- Lakiana, I have applied.
All right, well, let's talk and get that application in. It might be time.
Well, we have the application. It's just whether she wants to move forward into the
Oh,
being
okay.
official. Yeah.
Whether I want to be stuck as
Yeah,
the
you have to
only
give up
alternate.
the groupie title and actually come on.
Yeah. So we'll continue, but please put the word out. We're doing a lot of additional advertising on that. So it's not pulling a bunch of people in right now. I think it's a tough time. People are really stressed by the ongoing nature of the virus and school starting and people trying to get stuff figured out. And I just think it's everyone I know is pretty overwhelmed and stressed. So I think we just need to understand the context of the times as well.
I had just a quick question if I could. So we have 3 new members that just joined us, and then we need 1 more additional member. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we have a lot of work cut out for us, but
Yes, we do. But it's okay. I think it's an opportunity. It's a new moment. That's fine. We've been going for a couple years. It's really, there'll be some refreshing, and we are trying to wait to do the training pieces again until we can get this other new member on, because it's just been, or at least identify alternates, because it's a lot of work to pull everybody together to do that training. So it's very hard to do like every month or every other month. But
I thought
thank
you were
all so much.
recording it.
Well, we did intend to record the first one. There were some problems with that, but
Okay.
we'll do it again. But then some of them, like with the AMC and the Mental Health Alliance, I think we will want to record the AMC because, in all honesty, lots of those folks are getting older, and we want to make sure we have the story from the elders who came to this point in time. And so we're going to continue to look at how we do that. And then we, of course, want to have interactive opportunities as well. So we're trying. Jared?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I definitely do not prefer the recording, because every training I've provided is a little bit different because the situation is different. Where the city's at with compliance can be different, where the things to emphasize as part of the settlement agreement might change. So just from my selfish perspective, I would prefer to give that training live, at least the DOJ's component of it. And Judith, I'm happy to present every month or every other month if that means you have that many members coming on board.
Thanks, Jared. I really appreciate that.
Tahaji, before we end, for like the pre-steering committee meeting, would you guys like to just like follow up on email to see what like day and time would work best for you guys? Like ideally, would it be like a week or 2 weeks before the steering committee meeting? But we can just follow up. I just didn't know if maybe you guys had like a general idea of how you would like that to go.
I think the Tuesday before the steering committee, since it's the second Tuesday, and just for an hour, like 4 to 5 or 5 to 6, whatever is easiest for folks.
Okay. And I can send an email too, so we can get like.
I can
The
do it during
behavioral health
time.
subcommittee meets from 6 to 7:30.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. There's little things that we can work around.
We really appreciate all the work you all do. It does make a difference. We're happy. Thank you for all of the many, many hours and the passion and the swimming through the chaos together. Are we done, chairs?
Yep, Taji's computer died, by the way, so
Oh.
he fell off.
Hi, Barbara. Good to see
But-
your face.
Yep, we'll see everyone later then. Thank you all
Thanks,
for being
Aki.
here.